All right, guys, our next guests have been referred to as the Indiana Joneses of MMA. They travel the world, event by event, delivering quality content. Instead of precious jewels, they deliver very, very good content, as well as find the best bars, the best beers, the best places to drink. I'm, of course, talking about the man himself, John Morgan, and cold coffee, Ken Hathaway, who join us here on Submission Rated from Chicago. Boys, it doesn't look like a bar. It just looks like a hotel room. What happened to the plan of, finding the best underground place to go drinking?
It turns out the best underground place to go drinking is right here.
Oh, shit. What are you guys drinking? I see Fireball, and what was the can, John?
Oh, this is award-winning. Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yeah, I only know Pabst from Futurama, so it is a real beer.
Yeah, who's giving it?
It's a real beer. Yeah, wow. It's a real beer. It's not exactly high class, but if you're looking for something cheap, you're looking for something good. We specialize in cheap and good.
Yeah, sometimes it's quantity over the quality, but it's good. It's tasty. It won an award back in 1893.
Oh well, that's definitely valid.
that's probably the last time anyone would give that beer an award. It's so bland, guys. Let's talk about the big news. You guys are obviously Las Vegas residents. What about these Golden Knights currently in the Stanley Cup? It looks like they're not doing the best, but in their first season to get this far and to at least win one game so far in the Stanley Cup, that's a pretty big achievement. Have you guys been going crazy over there in Vegas and going to the games?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I've only gotten to go to one game so far. It's actually Mr. Kevin Iole was the one who was nice enough. He's a season ticket holder.
Where's our tickets, Kevin?
Exactly, right? Hit him up. I
never got an invite.
But, listen, sad to say, I'm not sure exactly when this episode is going to go live. We don't know if they'll still currently be in the playoffs or not. They are in the Stanley Cup final. We're losing right now. It's heartbreaking. But, yeah, I mean, come on, let's be honest. To your first season of existence, to get to the Stanley Cup Finals is a crazy. And I'll tell you the other thing that's been really cool about it is seeing T-Mobile Arena, both on television and I did get to go to one game. Seeing T-Mobile Arena look completely different than it does for a UFC show. I mean, the presentations that they do, the way they – I mean, like people in the community are going crazy over. I hope the UFC is maybe like actually kind of paying attention and taking notes and stuff because, I mean, they've done a hell of a job with presenting the sport inside T-Mobile.
Yeah. The pregame show stuff is incredible. Like, it's so neat just seeing the whole little bit of theater. Like, Las Vegas is one of the greatest theater performance there. Everybody always talks about Hollywood and New York and all this other stuff, but Las Vegas has some of the best actors around as well doing the different shows. So to see the pregame show gets very, very exciting. And outside of that, just to see the community, that the whole city rally around this team, everybody said, oh, Vegas can't support a team. It'll never work. And then they came out here and it is so amazing to see everybody, they put pictures of newborn babies in the hospitals and they're all wearing Golden Knights gear. I mean, like everybody in the community absolutely loves it. And you're right. It's been a rough couple games lately, but it is absolutely amazing. The run, it's been a fairy tale story for sure. So hopefully they will come back from behind and have the fairy tale ending, but it's been rough the past couple games, but we're very, very proud of them. It's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, because I was going to say, obviously, it really shows the world that there's a really good community in Las Vegas for sports teams. You guys, obviously, the football team, now you got the hockey team. Do you guys think there's a chance the NBA are sort of looking at this and possibly even bringing a basketball team next?
Absolutely.
Well, we actually do. It's kind of under the radar, unfortunately for them, but we actually have a WNBA team there right now, the Las Vegas Aces, which is a women's NBA team. So I think I kind of feel like that's testing the market, even though, typically the market to jump on women's sports as opposed to the male counterparts in the NBA, it's always been a little bit step behind. Even in college sports, there's always kind of been a little bit of a difference between the fan followings. But I feel like that was probably their way to start stepping into the area. But I mean,
we got a soccer team now.
We got a soccer team.
We got everything.
We may get a baseball team at some point.
I'm telling you, before you know it, we're going to have 5 pro teams in Vegas. But I definitely think
AFL team, cricket team, How about these things? Why is this happening, John?
Australia rules. High is big.
NRL.
Badminton is really blowing up.
Beach cricket.
Luge. Man, luge.
Luge in the desert.
Strong. Sand luge.
Sand luge.
Competitive magicians.
I feel like sand luge would be promoted like the early UFCs, like lots of blood, somebody might die, like one in 10 don't make it.
Luge 3 revenge.
Yeah.
You better file for a copyright right now, man. Somebody's gonna steal this idea.
Yeah. Someone's like watching this, like writing down notes. Like, yes, that's my big ticket. Oh man. But there's big things obviously happening this weekend in the MMA world. This is a great time for you guys. You're on the ground there in Chicago. Feels like we've been sort of kind of starved for these big events recently. You know, there's been a lot of these very top heavy fight nights, and by top heavy I mean just the main event really. UFC 223 didn't really work out as this grand event. UFC 224 wasn't massive. Do you guys think so far, like, look, weigh-ins haven't happened yet, so we don't know, but so far, as it looks, 225 might be one of the best cards of the year, because I imagine for you guys, obviously being in, the media world, this is a treat covering such a big card, for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, no question. On paper, man, this is definitely one of the best events. I mean, when you're literally having arguments over people, when people are saying, "Oh, Alistair Overeem's on the prelims, I can't believe it."
Yeah.
Joe Benavidez is like, "Why the hell am I on Fight Pass?" But you look at the card, and it's not really any disrespect. It's just like everything. I mean, the only argument you can have is that you could say, look, CM Punk versus Mike Jackson doesn't belong on pay-per-view, but I don't buy into that. It definitely belongs on pay-per-view. I mean, this is the entertainment business. We know what's going on here. They're trying to sell pay-per-views. From a sporting aspect, yeah, I mean, does CM Punk versus Mike Jackson deserve to be above Joseph Benavidez and Sergio Pettis? No. Alistair Overeem and Curtis Blaydes?
Let's
No.
be real. This could be CM Punk's UFC retirement fight. Give the man his due. He's put a lot of time in the UFC.
Yeah.
But then well, speaking of that, Cam, you got Rashad Evans on, I think, the early prelims, and you're like, well, this guy, that could be his retirement fight. Give him a decent spot somewhere.
I mean, it's just top to bottom. This card is just so exciting. I think we run into these ones every once in a while where we feel that they're really top heavy. We're like, oh, this is the best card. And this other card comes out, and you're just like, oh, that's even better. But right now we've had these run of these fight night after fight, UFC fight nights, where they've been all right cards, even though one of Utica had some decent fights. But I think our palate has been cleansed. We're ready for like a rock solid event. And this is that event. This event is just going to be absolutely stellar. I'm so excited to be there on the ground for it, for sure.
Casper mentioned the early weigh-ins. I just want to get you guys' thoughts before we really delve into some of these matchups. Dana White recently said that he might be looking to sort of scrap the early weigh-ins and just go back to everybody weighing in these ceremonial weigh-ins in front of everybody in the arena. What do you guys think of this? Do you think the early weigh-ins have had a negative effect? I mean, you've gone from event to event. You guys have been there where guys have been missing weight. In the big fights and the main events, do you think that the early weigh-ins had a negative impact on people missing weight, or do you think it's just been a little bit of a coincidence?
Well, all right, listen, I do think the early weigh-ins have had a negative impact on it. Okay, there's no question about it. We've seen the numbers, and I think the early weigh-ins have been sort of, quote-unquote, to blame for that. But I think getting rid of the early weigh-ins would be an awful, terrible, horrible idea. I mean, the whole thing was done with fighter safety involved. We realized through medical studies that the longer that people have to rehydrate, the better for them. The more fluid they can get on the brain, the better that is for, concussion-type concerns. I mean, in a perfect world, yeah, there would be no weight cutting, okay? But we haven't figured out how to do that yet, all right? So I understand the concern, but to me, this decision reeks of the UFC just being upset that they're losing fights, not that they're worried about fighter safety, not that they're worried about. So I'm hoping that there's a new idea that we haven't heard yet. I'm hoping that's not go back to, because here's the thing. The bottom line is, and you're right, I mean, we go from continent to continent, country to country, and we see different schedules. I mean, you guys don't even get the early weigh-ins down there in Australia because the way the times work and all that, so you just get the one weigh-in. So here's the thing that what I'm seeing is that it's basically just people not having their schedule down. It's you have a certain number of hours that you need to make weight, and they don't want to get up too early and start cutting too early, and that's what's been the problem. And I totally get that. It's an issue. People need to figure it out. But here's the thing that I don't think people get, and I've been having some conversations on Twitter and stuff like that today. What I don't think people realize about the old weigh-ins, right? And Cole Coffey can attest to this because he used to work for the UFC, so he'd have to be backstage, right? the fighters would show up, and you don't say the weigh-ins are at 4 p.m. local. That's when the official weigh-ins were under the old system. Well, the UFC would want them to be on weight at like 1 o'clock at the host hotel. Burt Watson would be there, and they'd be like, hey, at 1 o'clock, we need you on weight because we need to know at 1 p.m. what your weights are. If we do have problems, we have time to work it out. That is a benefit, but, we can know. But then what happens is you got guys and gals that are coming in and making weight at 1 p.m., and then they really can't even get on the official scale till 4. They've got to be, they've got to hang out in a waiting room at the hotel. Then they got to be transported to the arena where they also have to hang out in a waiting room. And, it's out. I mean, they could literally be on weight for hours. So you think about these guys and gals in these poor, dehydrated states, and they've got to do it for hours. Whereas the way it is now, you can be in the sauna on the 3rd floor of the hotel. You're working, you're running, you're doing good. You jump on the scale, you're 155. Let's go right now. You walk in, you check in the back real quick. You talk to the doctors real quick. Boom, 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 boom. You go in. 60 seconds later, you're drinking water. You're already starting to hydrating. And you've got that extra 12 hours.
Yeah.
I understand where Dana's coming from. I mean, again, now we're all just basing this on a little clip that we heard on UFC Unfiltered, right? I'm looking forward to talking to the officials this week. But I get where they're coming from. Of course, it sucks to lose weight. It sucks what, hell, just in the past month or so that I've been on the road, what we had to do with Darren Till, what we had to do with Kevin Lee, yes, it sucks. But to me, the idea of just, let's get rid of it, that's just a Band-Aid on a problem, man. That's not fixing anything. So, I'm not to go on too long about that, but I am pretty passionate about this. I don't think that just reverting to the way we used to do it is the right answer here.
Yeah, and I think it was funny because he said he believes a lot of fighters are night owls and don't like the mornings anyway. And it just was like, come on, let's get some solid evidence here. Let's figure out something here. Let's not just base this up. I think guys don't like the mornings or girls don't like the mornings. And I have a feeling that they like to sleep in. Like, this isn't the kind of reasoning behind scrapping something so big and making such a big difference.
And even if you buy into that, right, you could easily just move the 9 to 11 window to 11 to 1 or whatever the case may be. Like, that 9 a.m. window, that's not written in any rule book anywhere. It's just designed commission by commission. It's determined on a weekly basis. You could easily say, you know what? 9 to 11 is probably just a little bit too early. Why don't we do 11 to 1 or something along those lines where we still get the added benefit of the extra rehydration. We still get the window. I mean, there's so many things that can be done. And again, we haven't heard the whole story yet. I'm looking forward to talking to UFC officials this week and hearing, are there other options? Because if there are other options, then yeah, I'm down for it. Yes, this sucks for all of us. None of us want to lose fights. If there's a way we can change it, let's change it. But just scrapping it because it's inconvenient and sucks, that's not good. That's not good enough to me. And I think you look at the outpouring on social media, the way fighters have been standing up saying, please don't get rid of this. I think you can see, man, if the fighters are standing this far, how hard is it to get fighters to all stand behind one cause? If they're all mostly believing in this, maybe we should step back and listen.
Yep. And I'm with John, not to drag this on further.
Sure,
the fact is, it does seem that it boils down to time management. If a fighter doesn't have to be until, whatever it is, 1 o'clock where they finally would go down to the hotel room and do their pre-weigh before they would get on a bus to go to the venue and sit in the back in a cold, venue while all this music and the video's playing and they're all just sore and they're grumpy and they're not happy about the situation. Right now, and I think we saw this with the Darren Till video that came out and was very, very shocking for a lot of people.
That was brutal.
He just ran out of time. If it was a matter if he could stay on that cut to what they were doing and they had another, extra 6 or 7 hours that they could have prolonged and pushed him through, we might have seen our first death on screen watching this shit happen, which was just absolutely bizarre. But that was his own mismanagement of things. I think if fighters realize that, and if it does slide back from 9 to 11 to 11 to 1 or something that's a little bit later that gives a little bit more time, it makes it easier for them to allot that time. Once they get to the venue, so if they pre-weighed and they go, what's nice about when they're at the venue and they realize and they go to the back room and they do the pre-weigh, if they are off, they can go to a sauna, they can go to the gym, they can immediately run. What happens with the pre-weigh and when they go to the venue, there are no facilities set up at the venue for them to do anything after that point. They need to get on weight before they get over, or it's end all be all. It's done. You have no recourse. You have no way to fix the situation, and most of them are at a point where they're either, if they're not on weight, they're already at their worst situation, and then they're just sitting there for 2 hours waiting for this terrible moment when they're finally getting on the scale. And that just, to me, seems like cruel punishment for them to have to sit out there and wait while they're suffering. Just let it be over so they can actually start healing up and hydrating before this fight, because that's not doing anything to make him be the best or her for whatever her fight the next day. So it just seems to me that it's in a response to the fact that the right idea was to put it out there for the health, and then now it came back in their face that, hey, fighters aren't doing a better job of managing their time to make sure that they get on point, and then the UFC is just running out of time that they used to have an extra 6 or 7 hours. And like, well, wow, we used to be able to fix it before, and it's like, well, you gave yourself 6 or 7 hours before. Maybe bring in the fighters an extra day early before it, so you can start getting on their weight a little bit earlier in the week if you're worried about running out of time, so you can still do the early thing. You know what I mean? Like, most fighters we heard enjoy the fact that they can come in, they have all the facilities there, they can plan their night around it, they can get to that weight cut, and they get in the morning, and then they immediately get out, whether it's the post weigh-in buffet or whatever, but they can start fixing themselves. The fact is that a lot of some places, the weigh-ins, the ceremonial weigh-ins happen at 5 or 6 at night. You're going to try to make a fighter starve themselves and stay in that bad situation to 5 to 6 at night, and then expect them to hydrate themselves and get them into a good situation so they can fight less than 24 hours the next day. It's just not right.
We're just going to need all this audio from you guys when you get done so we can put this on the MMA Roadshow this week.
I was going to say, this is the MMA Roadshow featuring submission right now. So this is great.
Yeah, I was literally thinking the same thing about, you, Colby Covington. And I'm glad you said those things because they're all valid points. I'm actually really looking forward to press conferences where, you get on the mic, John, you ask some of these questions that I know people are sort of dying for you to ask Dana White. But you guys mentioned CM Punk. I want to obviously circle back to you. Beg your pardon?
Ask the hard questions.
John's going to be busting balls, and we're all going to enjoy watching it.
He's great at asking hard questions in like a lighthearted way.
Yeah.
I feel like John never had a rough breakup in his life. It was always like, look, you're ugly. I don't want to be with you, but like it's okay. And they'll be like, oh, this is okay. This is great. And then they walk away and realize what's happened.
Right there.
I remember UFC Sydney when Verdum had the Colby Covington incident. He's like, man, I don't want to talk about this. And John's like, yeah. Boom. I asked like 5 more questions. I'm just watching it all. Like, I love watching this man work.
They can't say no to him. They can't say no.
Fabricio, I know you don't want to talk about this, but.
I loved it. So good. So you mentioned obviously CM Punk before. First off, I'm almost surprised you mentioned it. He's on the pay-per-view card, not for his merit of fighting, but because he's a draw. The UFC trying to make money. Everybody understands that. But I'm a little bit surprised at the lack of promotion and how this is sort of flying under the radar for this fight compared to the first one. The first one had a documentary about it. It was arguably, Yoel and Jacek was fighting on that card. That was probably an even bigger fight, at least as far as big fight feel than that one. Probably second only to the Stipe fight. Here, this kind of feels like it's been swept under the rug a little bit. And I'm not saying that these things are both connected in any way, but honestly, do you guys think the UFC wants CM Punk to win? Because I know, obviously, he's someone you can make money a lot of money off, but in hindsight, that Mickey Gall matchup was an enormous mismatch and not really the kind you'd give somebody if you want to build them up. And also Mike Jackson, he's still way more experienced than Punk. And also, if Mike Jackson wins, do you think they'll even give him another fight, given that he'll be, only 1-1 in his record?
A lot of interesting questions. It's funny.
Mike Jackson.
Yeah.
Mike Jackson another fight.
It's funny because we were having dinner earlier. We did go out and get a little Chicago deep dish earlier. We were kind of having a conversation. I don't know if you guys got it on the broadcast down in Australia. They did have a nice little promo package during the Utica fight. About CM Punk, Mike Jackson. It was like the traditional UFC promo. Yeah. But it was really nice. But you're right. There hasn't been a ton of promotional stuff. Listen.
CM Punk's a beast. He's a monster. Oh, the Joe Rogan they just saw.
What's that one? It was a little more custom work than that. But no, listen. It does make sense. You got 2 title fights on this card, right? Do you want to be hyping CM Punk over 2 title fights? I think that would be a disservice to everybody. For that matter, how much promotion are they doing for Andrei Arlovski versus Tai Tuivasa? How much promotion are they doing for Joseph Benavidez versus Sergio? This card is so deep, you can only do so much promotion. And so I guess I kind of understand it. I don't think the UFC is afraid of promoting the guy. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't follow professional wrestling much. So when CM Punk got signed to the UFC, like I'm literally like, I had this Wikipedia page open, like reading stuff so I could try to like, write some kind of report because I had no idea who the guy was. But since then, like having a chance to talk to him and interview him a couple of times, I mean, I like the guy, man. I think he's got the right attitude about this whole thing. It's just like, I love the way he approaches it. I mean, the fact that he's just like, listen, I'm not saying I'm great. I'm not saying I'm even good. I'm just saying that I'm lucky. I have a bunch of Twitter followers, and this is a passion of mine, and I can chase this passion. And if I got a chance to do it, gosh darn it, I want to do it, and I don't want to look back with regret or whatever. So I respect the hell out of CM Punk, and I think Dana White does too. I mean, I think if Dana and the UFC brass didn't, I mean, they could be done with this experiment, right? I mean, they did it once. And man, CM Punk again, it was a mismatch. I mean, in retrospect, at the time, you were like, okay, this kind of makes sense. But in retrospect, it was a terrible mismatch. I mean, Mickey Gall was a legitimate prospect that maybe we didn't know at that time. So, listen, I don't think they're ashamed of having the guy on the card. I don't think they're trying to bury him anywhere. This isn't the typical UFC fight, that's for sure. But it's going to sell some pay-per-views. It's going to get some headlines. It's going to get some press. It's going to get some media. There's no question about it. And listen, man, I think CM Punk's a good guy. Now, a lot of questions there, man. Like, what do they do? What do they do if CM Punk wins? What do they do if he loses? What do they do with Mike Jackson if he wins? What do they do if he loses? It's tough because you're right, guys. I mean, those two guys, like both of them, man. There's not like God bless Mike Bond when he has to do his matchmaker call at the end of the week, like. I don't know who the hell you're supposed to match those guys up with, dude. I mean, there's nobody else. Those guys are like, I was glad they made this fight. As ridiculous as the fight is, like to me, this is the fight to make. Like I love that Mike Jackson was just like, hey, I'm the other guy that lost. Like, let's do me. You know what I mean? I mean, because it's true. So I mean, I think it was the right fight to make. But you're right, it's in a weird position because whichever guy wins, I don't necessarily like look at the roster and be like, oh, now here's the fight we need to make. It's a little bit weird.
And Mike Jackson is so much more experienced than Punk. He's been in Muay Thai and boxing. He's had amateur MMA bouts. I wonder if you guys think that this is sort of a bit of a mismatch. And I also wonder if CM Punk, even if he wins, hypothetically, if he does win, he may just decide to hang it up and be like, look, this has been incredibly hard. I got my win. This is kind of what I was going for. I've ticked that off the bucket list. I don't want to have another fight, which I imagine if he wins, the UFC will probably want him to have another fight and keep drawing money.
I agree with that. I think we saw in the last presser when somebody asked Dana if Phil lost. I'm sorry, if CM Punk lost.
Wow, going very proper there. Phil.
Phil, first name basis. You guys are hanging out,
They asked him if he lost, if that would be it, and Dana's like, yeah, I'd have to think that it would be. I almost see this fight as it's a piece of spectacle. I almost see it as being a one-off, one and done, even if a guy wins. If it's Jackson. I think Mike is a great enough guy. I just don't see the UFC, even if he does beat this, unless this is like a crazy drawn out fight that people are like up out of their seats like, wow, that was awesome. I just don't see him getting another invite. I just feel like the only reason he got this was just to put a nice bookend on the CM Punk experience. If CM does win, and he expresses that he wants to fight again, I could see where they'll maybe humor the idea. But if he doesn't, I mean, obviously, I think this is the end of the CM Punk experience. But what's been really kind of unique about I keep wanting to say Phil because we're buddies like that.
Your boy.
Even though he was this WWE or WWF or whatever the organization that he in, a superstar, he came into this organization, the highest level of of mixed martial arts, for the most part, that most people would argue out there, and he started from ground zero. So there was a part of him that I think every one of us non-fighters was hoping that somebody could pick up that mantle and run with it and get enough expertise and experience to go out there and get a win. So there's the people like me that are like, yes, win. And if you win, maybe there's hope for all of us, So there's like people rallying around him. He's almost like this everyday guy, and people forget the fact that he was this super huge megastar at times in this whole other organization. So people want him to win. But if it doesn't happen, he will just go back to this fact of, hey, this was fun. We appreciate what you did, but, the joke's over, don't do it. But I just don't see them extending Mike, I mean, he's a good fighter. He's better than Phil. I think this matchup still weighs far in on one side opposite of CM Punk. And this is another guy that's actually been training at some legit training places. Not that Rufus aware of CM Punk, but like he's training hard. You watch footage, you watch CM Punk train, it's a whole different level. It's almost like I was telling John, I feel like you're watching the gym catering to training to a VIP that's coming in. Everybody's going about 30%. When Mike's trained in his place, those guys are going 100%. They're going hard. Like, it's two different levels of guys coming in. I just want to be somewhat entertaining, and I want Phil to get out of it what he's hoping to get out of it so he can be happy with himself, because I love and respect what he wanted to do. He wanted to challenge himself. He wanted to push himself to another level, and I respect that to the utmost. You know, he did what he said he was going to do, and he did what nobody else. I mean, like, we all say, oh, man, that'd be fun. That'd be cool to do that. But who wants to put the work in to actually do it and go out there? And he actually took his blows and he took his fights. I mean, he has nothing else to prove in that area. So
I love that you're so formal and calling him Phil. Like, why don't you just lay it out? I mean, I know when y'all hang out, what do you call him? Like P. Busy or something like that?
It's
Or...
really
Okay.
Philly P.
Philly P.
It's gonna be awesome because it's gonna be in Chicago, and it kind of mirrors his WWE career, for which people don't realize. No one thought that he was gonna make it in the WWE. He almost got fired a bunch of times, and no one thought he was gonna become the champion. And he had to sort of battle because he's actually a very small guy. He's probably one of the first kind of small guys to actually make it and prove that the WWE could. He actually changed the game a little bit for professional wrestling, because he's one of the original small guys that proved that, you know, you could put a title belt on a guy and put him in the pay-per-view, and he doesn't have to be the size of like a Stone Cold Steve Austin or a Brock Lesnar.
He's got fantastic walking music. I'll give him that, man.
Personality.
It came on, man. It was cool.
It's gonna make for a great atmosphere in Chicago when he comes out. Now, let's move it along, because we do have a couple of other fights I want to talk about. I just want to touch on Rashad Evans with you guys, because obviously we mentioned him before. This is a guy that's done a lot in the sport. He's on the early prelims in the main event there in the early prelims against Anthony Smith. Do you guys think this is a fight that needed to be put on this card? I mean, it almost feels like it could be at this point with the cards that we're getting from the UFC. Yeah, it could be a fight night main event or a co-main event. Is this really an appropriate place to sort of put Rashad Evans? And do you think that if Rashad loses here, which, I mean, who knows what's going to happen where he's at in his career? He's had a bit of a rough run lately. Do you think we might actually see him retire in that position this weekend?
Well, the first question, as far as the fight being here, I will say this. You know, now that the TV deals are out, right? Like now that the contracts are signed, and maybe we could get people to talk a little bit more, not on record, but off record. But I really would like to know what the logic of making this card was, because it's
all the good fights on one card, and the rest of the year, like next few months, there's not going to be anything big.
That's it. I mean, so I was like you don't need to put this. So yeah, like this fight does not need to be here. I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, you're telling me. I mean, okay, listen. Tell me that Rashad Evans versus Anthony Smith could have headlined UFC Utica last week.
Yeah.
They could have. You know what I mean? Like,
at least the co-main, 100%. Yeah.
But you know what I mean? He's got the New York ties, and he's the former champ. I mean, so listen, it could have happened. So I am interested with the building of this card, because it's to me it's so incredibly stacked. I mean, 226 in Vegas is looking ridiculous as well, but I mean, this card is ridiculously stacked. So yeah, the fight didn't necessarily need to be here. But yeah, could it be the end? I mean, it's scary to think about that, but yeah, it could be, man. Rashad, it's crazy because like when he's at 185, he looks good. I mean, he looks physically like a specimen, but it doesn't look like it's necessarily easy for him to be there easy, you know, but he does look good. But it just seems like there's an issue with pulling the trigger in there lately. It just seems like whether it be the desire, whether it be the intensity, whether it be like something's not there. I mean, he's still the same guy. Love talking to him, man. Respect everything that he's accomplished, but there's something that's not there. I'm not one of those guys that walk around saying, you need to retire. You need to hang it up. You need to hang it up. I mean, look, these guys are trying to make money for their families, man, and they have invested their blood, sweat, and tears. So, if he thinks he can squeeze another couple of fights out of his body, then by all means, man, do it, dude. You paid your dues. You know what? You get to cash in that little over-the-hill check every now and then. That's okay, man. That can happen. But yeah, I do think the end is coming. And
would it be sad to see it sort of come on the early prelims in this event? I mean, a lot of casual fans, even though it's a stacked event, a lot of casual fans might not tune into the end of the prelims, maybe for Overeem, Curtis Blaydes. It might even be overlooked by a lot of fans. It might not get the eyeballs that it kind of deserves.
It would be sad if a former champion like Rashad retired on the early prelims.
I mean, I don't know. Is it better to kind of retire off in the distance and quietness with not as many people watching, or is it better to go out and like just get knocked the F out in a main event somewhere? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's as much as I love the sport, and man, I love the sport, man. I really do. I mean, obviously my life centers around it, but dude, there are not graceful exits from this sport, man. There is not very many good ways out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, people just don't retire on top, and even when you're there, and you're, Michael Bisping. I mean, dude, I was in Shanghai for his last fight, and there was no media there. There was nobody was there, and I remember the feeling of everything, just the air going out of the room when he got knocked out, and how sad it was, and so what's better? Is it better to get knocked out in the main event and then retire quietly like months later? There's just no graceful way to leave the sport. So I think anybody that's ever trying to craft the perfect ending to a career and say like, well, this is other than winning a title and walking away. I mean, that's it. I guess GSP is the only one that gets to have the graceful exits, even if it messes everything else up in the sport.
Yeah.
I think there is something, and we've talked about this before too, that
on the MMA Roadshow,
which has now blended into submission radio.
The fact that retirements are so just. You don't get this big deal like you think that these guys deserve. I would love the fact of if a guy wants to retire, all right, you have your last fight. We know this is probably going to be your last fight, but come back to like a next event. Let the UFC put a nice little package together. Make a formal retirement at a press conference. Come do it. Get what you are deserved.
Michael Bisping in Liverpool would have been a great example of that.
They play song 2, and he comes in and waves to the crowd, and like maybe goes into the octagon and thank you people. It's been amazing. Like,
and he looks good. He's ready. He's not saying it right after he got knocked the fuck out. I mean, like it's so unceremonious. I feel so bad that these guys aren't getting what they deserve, and I wish the UFC did a better job of making an ordeal of these retirements, whether it be after the fact or something, because. You're right. This could be maybe Rashad wants to hang it up, but it's not deserving of what he's done for the sport, and just the fact that he's actually just a wonderful individual. He's very nice. He's probably one of the best dudes to just get on there and talk about the sport. He's seen so much that if he does choose that this would be the end thing, let him come back at the next event and put all the fucking great clips that we've seen that he's done, put it in a nice package and play something out there. Give him a chance to have a formulated speech and put it together. Don't put it after the fact.
It makes sense. I mean, they have
drives me so crazy.
They have guest fighters at every event. If a guy retires, why shouldn't he automatically? Like, even if it's not like the Liverpool and Bisping, like that would be the perfect fit, right? But let's say that Liverpool event never happened. Let's say that was in Dublin or whatever. Like, if Bisping showed up to this card and they did a nice little piece, it would still work. I mean, that's a great point, man.
I wish they would do that. I'm hoping they eventually get the idea and realize that. I mean, there should be something more ceremonial about this. I mean, I feel so bad for these guys. They give so much. I mean, the fact that you can do what you guys are doing, the fact that we're able to do what we can do, is because of what these guys put on the line and gals. So the fact that we don't give them their proper send off, I feel empty every time it happens. We don't get something, because I'm like, there's got to be a better way for us to do something for them. So I wish the UFC would change that for sure, because it's not right. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I think it's something that we've thought about for a long time. We never really came up with the solution, but I think you guys just did, and I would definitely love to see that implemented in the future. While we're sort of talking about guys being brushed under the rug a little bit and hidden on the prelims, I mean, Joseph Benavidez versus Sergio Pettis. this is a crazy fight for the flyweight division. This is easily something that could be looked at as a number one contender fight. But what do you think is really up for grabs here? Because Benavidez is kind of fighting for his spot. He's on an outrageous win streak. I think if he beats Pettis, there's going to be 7-fight win streak for him. He really, really rebounded since his last loss. Do you think that the fact that they're on the early prelims is kind of an indication that the UFC maybe don't want to promote this one as big, and if Benavidez wins, which I think there is a good chance, he probably won't be getting their next title shot. It might be Cejudo instead.
I mean, listen, there's no question that the UFC has had their concerns about the flyweight division over the years. I mean, we've heard the rumblings behind the scenes, and there's definitely truth behind that. It's been tough to market, and I hate the fact that it hasn't been a financial success, because I think Demetrious Johnson, to me, top pound for pound fighter on the planet right now. I want to know more about the logic of the construction of this card, because it does seem a weird place to put it. I mean, again, you are still trying to drive people to subscribe to Fight Pass. I mean, I think when people go like, oh, why is that on Fight Pass? Well, listen, if you literally just constructed the most interesting fight at the top and to the least interesting at the bottom, why the hell would anybody subscribe to Fight Pass? I know it's different internationally. But in the United States, all that does is give you the exclusive prelims. So if all you did was put, quote unquote, the worst or least interesting fights in the card, why the hell would anybody want to pay for that? You do have to give people a reason to pay for it. So, Eric Winter, when he was still around, he used to be great about verbalizing that. This is the Fight Pass featured fight. I mean, remember, the Poirier fight that they had on. I mean, they went out of their way to make sure that there were interesting matchups on there. So I think there's still a little bit of touch in that here. I don't necessarily think that this shows that they don't care. I know Joseph. We talked to him a little bit the other day at the PI, the Performance Institute, and he was a little bit frustrated with the card placement for sure. But I do think this is a big fight. Joseph is in that spot. We know it. I mean, we've seen it through history, right? If you're 0-2 against a champ, getting a third fight is tough. But man, have we ever been in a position like this, where the guy that was 0-2 was clearly the number one or number two, depending if you want to put Cejudo there, with the injuries and all that. But at worst, he's the number two contender, right? And yes, he's 0-2, but Demetrious doesn't have questions. Normally when you're in that position, there's other guys. There's number 4, number 6, number 8, number 9 that haven't shot yet. Demetrious has beat everybody, and it's been several years, man. I honestly believe that Joseph Benavidez should be considered. I don't think he should be in that kind of outlying 0-2 land where you're saying, nope, you don't get your third shot. It's been years. Demetrious has beat everybody else. The Dillashaw fight would have been intriguing to me. It didn't happen. So, maybe Cejudo's next, and I got no problem with that. Cejudo's paid his dues as well, and Joseph has been sitting on the sidelines, no question about it. But you know what? If the Cejudo fight happens and DJ wins again, I think it may be time for Benavidez 3. I really do.
Ken, I was going to ask you, just to move things along a little bit, there's a couple of really good heavyweight fights on this card. And, I mean, obviously, Alistair Overeem versus Curtis Blaydes, a fantastic matchup that's going to be on the prelims as well. Just want to get your thoughts as well, John, as to who you guys think is going to be winning in this Curtis Blaydes Alistair Overeem fight. Who are you guys leaning towards?
I really don't pay attention to the heavyweights much. I relate more to the flyweights. Those guys,
featherweight kind
more
of
my
guys.
frame. You know what I'm saying? I don't really relate
Women's
to
bantamweight, I think.
This is one of, especially this one. This is one where Alistair, in my book, I mean, this is like a changing of the guard type fight. If Alistair, we're either going to see whether Alistair still has it to guys that are coming up towards the top, or whether maybe possibly Alistair's nearing the end. I mean, I think Overeem for the longest time has been this force that everybody thought nobody could get through, and then we've seen that he could be beaten. And Curtis Blaydes, I mean, he's this guy that I think for the longest time people didn't give him his credit. People thought he didn't have the punching power, or maybe he just didn't give him credit. But he's a very dangerous fighter with a lot of stamina and a lot of speed. And he has quite the chance to take this. I mean,
I like Blaydes' opportunities here,
I think Blaydes has a really, really good shot to take this fight. We talked about the Tuivasa fight. That's another incredibly crazy fight. I don't want to jump ahead to whatever, but that's another one where we're looking at, like the heavyweight fights in this card, I think are sick. And I think that's another one that's great. Did you lean Tuivasa on that, or were you leaning?
With that one, guys, what do you feel? How do you feel about the positioning as well? Because this is very interesting too. You got Curtis Blaydes versus Alistair Overeem. which is a more higher ranked heavyweight fight than Tai Tuivasa versus Andrei Arlovski. But they put Tai and Arlovski on the main card. But you got two young up-and-coming guys in the heavyweight division, and Blaydes, who's technically sort of fighting for a better position in the division, but they sort of went and put Tai Tuivasa on the main card because we're guessing they see big potential in him because of the way he finishes his fights. Were you interested in the way they sort of formulated this?
I agree.
I think that's it. That's completely what
look at what Tai brings to the table, right? He's got the record, all right. He's got the finishing streak.
He's young. He has a long future ahead of him.
All those things there, man, and it never hurts when you got those ties to a certain market, right? I mean, when you've got one international market behind you, that's a big one. So yeah,
what market is that? What market is that?
Yeah, no, listen, it's interesting. We're kind of, I'll be honest with you. I hate the Tuivasa Arlovski fight, man. I really do because
really,
I do. I'll tell
personal reasons.
Personal reasons only. Tuivasa, I think, is definitely. I mean, you guys have been chirping about him for a long time, and you guys are right, man. I mean, you guys were filling me in. Before he ever came, broke up to the scene. You guys were saying, watch this guy, man. I'm telling you. He's going to be the next guy from our market, and you're damn right, man. The guy's got a ton of talent, and he's got a great personality as well. He's marketable. He's got all these things about him, right? And then you see him face against Andrei Arlovski, who, to me, man, is, a legend, man. I don't have a problem throwing out there legend. I mean, he's a guy that was a superstar during that formative boom years of the UFC, and he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, man, dude. He really is, and the ups and downs that he's endured, man, the knockouts that he suffered, but then he got back on the winning road. And then so it's kind of one of those fights where you're like, man, you're feeding the old dog to the young lion, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh man, it's tough. So I feel like this is a tough fight. In my heart, I'm pulling for Andre just because, man, I love the guy as a human being, and I love what he's done for the sport, and I just love who he is. But, man, again, we talked about, graceful exits being difficult in this sport, man. I mean, at some point in time, especially in the heavyweight division, all of a sudden these young bucks behind you start coming up and pulling you out of the way, and I think this might be, as you said, the Blaydes Overeem fight might be a changing of the guard. This might be one of those too.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, we know. Sorry to jump in there, Ken, but we know. I'm just wondering your perspective. We know that Tai is a devastating striker. I mean, he's going to go in there. We know Andrei Arlovski's chin, especially at this point of his career, isn't the strongest. But do you guys feel like it's still a little bit risky? Because the Arlovski that we saw in his last fight was sort of utilizing his sambo, his judo a little bit more. Do you think in this fight we might actually see Arlovski try and focus on his grappling skills a little bit more? Because he is a skilled grappler. I mean, his history in sambo is outstanding. He's just chosen not to really utilize that before. Do you think going into this fight, we know that standing with Tai is a recipe for disaster. The guy's just naturally an absolute killer like Mark Hunt.
I mean, Andre almost might need to make it kind of a boring fight.
Yeah, he's got to make it. He's got to make it dirty. He's got to make it. He's got to make it boring. He's going to have to get him. He's going to have to close that distance and catch up with him. Do that dirty boxing. Drop the elbows. I think his biggest fault is if he sits back and wants to trade with Tai because Tai is young. His chin is still brand new. Doesn't have a lot of miles. But I think that's where the experience is going to come in too. Tai is either going to walk into something. He's either going to get over eager to try to come in there thinking that he could take Overeem. I can't speak right now.
Too much fireball.
Yes, he's
not enough.
Yeah, right. I got another one ready to go. He's going to either get over eager and do something he's not ready. And Arlovski's going to he's got the experience. Yeah. I think he knows how to kind of toy with these younger guys. And if there's a big difference between the guy that's 25 and I believe that's how old he is, and the guy that, is Arlovski's age, which I won't say because we're graceful as we get older. We don't mention ages. I think he's going to make it dirty. He's going to use that experience. He's going to come in there. And if he gets in there and he keeps that distance and he keeps it close, I think he's going to probably if he can control the fight like that and he can and dominate where it goes and dictate where it goes, I think Arlovski is going to get the win. But if he decides that, hey, maybe I still got the chin. Maybe he wants to get back to those days of just standing and banging in the middle.
Nah.
That's probably not the best decision.
He's got to get in the clinch. He's got to get in the clinch.
And Ty's done stuff in his fights where, like, when Ty goes into a fight, we know he's super talented, but he's not really a game planner. And for example, you guys will remember when he tried to go for that sort of backwards slam, and we go, well, why did you try and do that? And he's like, oh, it just sort of came to me. Or he did a flying jumping kick. You know, he might do something like where he injured his knee, did a move like, you know, where this is how I stuffed up my knee, and I just thought I'd just do it in the octagon. He's not really the most calculated guy. If he's in a position where Andrei Arlovski wants to take him down, he may very well be like, well, we'll just go down. I'll prove to you that I can make it on the ground. He kind of likes to prove things in the octagon, so he may kind of play towards Arlovski's experience and game plan a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, I think a lot of guys are like, oh, they'll take me down, but you know, most guys in training can't keep me on the ground. I'll get right back up. You know,
yeah.
You can't say that when you're against a guy that's at such a top level, especially like Andre. So this is the perfect fight where, you know, like John says, Andre's the guy that we all love. We respect him for what he's done. This is a kind of fight that, especially when you see this guy that's coming up, no losses or whatever, he's like, oh, and he gets a win. They're like, oh, he's still got it. He's still got it. This is the perfect story for Andre to win. But it's all got to be, he's got to play it smart. He's got to make sure he sticks to his game plan, makes it dirty, makes it grungy, keeps it to where, you know, Ty never feels comfortable in there. And then I think he's got a good chance. But if he lets Ty come in there, get comfortable, get around, get a second round underneath his belt where he feels comfortable and where he feels like he's not at danger, then I think then it's going to be probably not a good night, because then he'll have the confidence and the aware to get the finish. And I mean, I hate to think that this would go to a decision. That would be an ultimate
Imagine
mistake.
that. You could see it happening if Arlovski does utilize the rest.
I don't even say that. I don't even want to put it out.
Jinxing it. And I guess the thing with Ty and sort of his game planning, etc., he admitted to us that, you know, he feels his wrestling is the weakest, and he's probably he's eyeing maybe moving to AKA after this fight and sort of, you know, training with those guys. So yeah, you know, he lost to Peter Graham. People don't know this because it wasn't an MMA fight; it was a sort of mixed rules fight. But he lost to another legend in Peter Graham. He was a lot bigger, a lot heavier. So I think that sort of contributed to him, you know, just getting Ty. But this is kind of like a do-over for Ty. Another legend, another guy from the old guard. So if you can beat Arlovski, it's a huge feather in his cap. Just looking at another Aussie, and guys, we promise we'll let you go in a moment. Megan Anderson versus Holly Holm. Just quickly, I want to get your thoughts on sort of what the planning here is, because what is the UFC's plan? You know, if they're trying to give Megan exposure to the UFC audience who may not be familiar with her Invicta work, you know, before they finally line her up with Cyborg, they probably should have given her maybe somebody a little bit easier than Holly. On the other hand, you know, a Holm Cyborg rematch, that's not really the fight that anybody's dying for. So I didn't understand really the booking here. What is the UFC's plan here?
We were actually having the same conversation earlier. Yeah. I don't necessarily understand it. Like, it's not a showcase fight by any stretch of the imagination. You know what I mean? Like, in fact, I mean, Holly may be a horrible matchup for Megan in terms of the fact that, you know, the athleticism, the speed. I mean, Megan has the size. I mean, the thing that everybody's been excited about, right, is that Megan is a legit featherweight, right? So you're like, hey, man, if we can see her against Cyborg, you know, we can see a legit featherweight in there instead of 135ers moving up. And that's true. I mean, that's very true. And I think that's why it's an enticing fight. But when you think of 135ers moving up, I mean, Holly Holm, who is going to be, I think she's going to be faster than Megan. I think her movement's going to be there. Now, will she necessarily connect as much? Will she necessarily land with as much strength and power? That remains to be seen. But, yeah, I mean, this could potentially be a horrific stylistic matchup for Megan Anderson, and that does concern me a little bit. I mean, I guess the good thing about Cyborg is that, no offense to Megan Anderson, I think us as hardcores are like, hey, that's a fight we'd love to see. But I don't think Cyborg versus Megan Anderson versus Cyborg versus, you know, Rebecca Smith or whatever, just pick somebody off the streets, sells anymore. You know, I think, to be honest with you, I think in a Cyborg fight, it's almost like selling Tyson back in the day. It's Cyborg is about to beat this chick up. Don't you want to tune in and watch it? And so I think from the UFC's perspective, from a business perspective, it doesn't necessarily matter, because I think whoever they put her against, it sells about the same. But I will be honest with you. I'm a little bit concerned with the matchmaking here, because this is definitely not a showcase fight for Megan Anderson, and I think could be If you want to call it a trap fight or a setup fight or however you want to call it, I think it has the potential to be a bad night for Megan.
Yeah, one of the great things about Megan, the fact is, she has the whole package. She's a talented fighter. She has a great look about her. She talks awesome when she talks her shit about her opponent. I mean, she's the complete package. What's one good thing about this for Megan? She's going up against Holly Holm, a former champ. Granted, it was a different weight class or whatever, but Holly is such just a tough fighter. I pick Holly to win this fight. I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah.
But the great thing about for Megan in this situation, she's not losing to just some schmo. She can lose this fight and not really lose any ground at all when it comes to getting another fight in the UFC. You're losing to a former champ. You're losing to Holly Holm, who fought Cyborg, who did all this other stuff. So, I mean, if there's a rainbow or there's a silver lining to the fact that this is a bad matchup for Megan, is that she can honestly, in my opinion, lose this fight and not lose any ground or lose any desire for her to come over and have a place in the UFC. I mean, I think maybe it might lose something if you think the only fight for her is Cyborg, but I think there's a lot of other matchups that are quite possible for Megan Anderson that a lot of people buy into, and I think she has the flexibility to jump down to the 35 if she really wanted to. It would be a tough cut for her, but there are other fights for her, and I just don't see that with a loss here is a game over for her. I think she has a bright future with the UFC. I think it's great because it's good for Holly because a win over the person that everybody's been asking for, Cyborg, gives her the possibility to stay at the top of the division, to get other exciting fights. Holly has some of the best coaches when it comes to game planning in the world. The way they break down opponents, it's absolutely mind-boggling. I've never seen anybody do it any better than their team. So I know that she's going to come in so prepared for Megan that I just don't think Megan is going to have an answer for what Holly's going to be bringing towards her. But that being said, if it's a tough fight or regardless, Megan has a great future in the UFC, whether or not with this loss, because a loss to Holly Holm is not like a loss to a regular person. Holly is a former champ and an absolute stud in the division. So I think that's probably why they wanted this fight to happen, because it's a win-win situation for her. The only one that really has something to lose is Holly, should Holly lose. So see that happening? But it's quite possible because Megan is a beast. She's huge. She's super strong. And I love her tats, man. She fucking tats easily. Her tats knock out Holly's lack of tats easily.
Speaking of tats on female Australians, is bare knuckle boxing taking Australia by storm?
I'm pretty sure outside of people that go on MMA Fighting and MMA Junkie and a couple other websites, no one here in Australia even realizes that the event's even happened yet. But I don't know. I think it might. Australia's really weird. Like it's in a weird position where people have gotten really PC lately, and things like Australian football, the NRL, just local sports that are really, really big here, have gone under huge turmoil with people saying there's health issues and concussions and stuff like that. So I don't know. Bare knuckle boxing might not actually be as successful as people think. But I don't know, because boxing does have its roots very deep here in Australia. So we'll see. Obviously, Jeff Horn with a big weekend coming up as well. Let's quickly talk about the two main fights. We want to get your predictions, guys. Dos Anjos versus Covington. I mean, this looks like it could be a very tough night at the office for Colby. How do you guys see this fight going? Who do you guys lean towards in this one?
You know, it's funny. As we were walking home from the bar earlier, we were having this conversation.
Every conversation's repeated, and then when you guys do your podcast, you have to talk about it from scratch again. Like I feel sorry for you guys.
It's funny. Listen, I think look, I've been on the Colby Covington hype train since day one. I mean, I met the guy at his UFC debut. He's a better fighter than people want to give him credit for. I get it. You know, the trash talking crosses lines, and some of his shtick is a little bit tiresome and offensive and all that. I get that. But at the same time, you know, please, all these people that are frustrated, understand, like, look at how he got his title shot. You know, where's Kamaru Usman? You know, I mean, he was able to move past because he was willing to take those chances and say those things and do those inflammatory things. I think he's a better fighter than a lot of people want to give him credit for. So, I've seen a lot of people that think this is just a completely one-sided matchup. Like, listen, Colby's a better fighter than you're giving him credit for, man. His wrestling is fantastic. He has an incredible scrambling ability, man. One thing I've been a big fan of is his ability to, like, get himself out of bad positions, man. I mean, Mount stuck against the cage. Like, his scrambling ability is fantastic. His cardio is amazing as well. I think he's got a chance in this fight. I do think RDA is a cut above, man. I do think RDA is granted, I know he's a former lightweight, so maybe you say, oh, does he belong in this division? But that dude was like, in the same way that Conor McGregor was a lightweight that could make it to 145, I think RDA was always a welterweight that just found a way to make it to lightweight for a long time. I think he's a natural welterweight. I think RDA is a cut above here. I think RDA is the right pick. But I think anybody that's completely discounting Colby Covington is making a mistake. He's a better fighter than people give him credit for.
Just to be opposite to John, I lean towards Colby on this one, even though so maybe I'm jumping fully on the hype train, but also too I realize that a lot of these guys, when it comes into an interim title, I think all the trash talk and everything you've been able to kind of build yourself up somehow falls apart once a title, whether it be the real title or interim title, sort of comes into play. But my pick for MMA Junkie, I picked Colby. I mean, he has a way to just sort of grind these guys out. His only downfall is if he goes in there with too much hubris and think that that RDA is not dangerous, that RDA is not going to catch him with a head kick or not catch him to a kick to the liver. I think if he can keep his wits about him and do what he needs to do, I think his wrestling and I think his ground game is going to be enough to probably get it done. So
I think if he's going to do it, the grappling is the place to do it, man. I've seen a lot of people like, hey, RDA is a black belt, but I'm telling you, man, Colby on the ground is really good. His top game, his scrambling game is really, really good. I do think if he does get into a firefight, that's not good.
Because even if you get to a point where even with some of these wrestlers, they realize that, hey, they're good enough with wrestling, they could stay out of the submission holds where they can just stay on top. They stay heavy. They do enough damage. And then next thing you know, 3 minutes out of the 5-minute round is gone. You're like, whoa, what just happened? And that judge is, oh, well, I guess I got to give it to that guy that sat on the other guy for 3 minutes. And I would hate to hope that I don't want that fight to happen where it's just 5 minutes of guys laying on top of each other for this, but it's quite possible. He has such good wrestling.
Well, we've already said that, like, Arlovski should beat Tuivasa in the clinch. Blaydes. Bro, this is gonna. Hey, this card looks awesome on paper, but if it plays out the way we're seeing it, it's gonna suck.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Right,
well,
so you got one pick for RDA and one pick for Colby on that one.
Well, how do you guys see Whittaker and Romero playing out? And alternatively, how do you think it's gonna suck if the right person wins?
Well, I think Romero should just lay on top of him for 5 rounds.
100%, right? Yeah.
Okay. No, listen. Look, man, Whittaker. And I've said it, man. I doubted Whittaker so many times since he moved up from 170, man. I thought just to move up from welterweight was a mistake. I mean, I know he's. He said, like, I'm a big guy. Like, nah, bro, you're really not that big of a guy in the middleweight. Like, I've stood next to a lot of guys in the middleweight division. And so I always thought, like, man, I think this dude's undersized. But, man, he just seems to get better and better every time out, And I thought that the win over Romero the first time was so gutsy, man. I thought it was just a gut. And that was before we knew, that he was hurt and that he was dealing. I mean, you kind of thought maybe something was wrong, but then you found out, no, things were really wrong, and he still gutted his way through it. And I do think there's something to be said about, being in there with Romero. I think that guy is so physically and visually, like, intimidating that I think being in there with 5 rounds, like, just helps you so much to be like, okay, yeah, that dude is incredibly scary looking, but I know exactly, what he moves like. I know what he feels like. I know what his strength is. I know all those things. So, knowing that we've already seen this fight, look, if we hadn't seen this fight before, if this was the first time these two guys are going against each other, I might say Yoel, right? I mean, Yoel's got the wrestling. He's so scary. He's got the power, but Rob just keeps showing us that his takedown defense is better than we give him credit for. He continues to get better as a fighter. So, yeah, I think he kind of goes with the same game plan he went with before. Shows that same heart that he had before, and I think he gets it done again.
Yep, I'm with John. I mean, if Rob's coming in 100% like we hope he is, I have no reason to doubt him anymore. I finally got to the point, like John says, I'm done doubting the kid. The kid, every time I went in, it said in the past, oh, there's no chance. Jacare's going to get him. Yoel's going to get him. Nobody gets him. He knocks them all of them out. I'm sorry if I can't cuss on your show.
It's Australia.
No,
you can say whatever you want, man.
All right,
Israel Adesanya's the regular.
Yeah.
He's a beast, man, and I don't see. I'm sorry, guys. I don't see this going any different. I can't bet against the guy. I mean, he's been in there with the scariest guys that I think if we were across the octagon from him, I'd be like, dude, can you open this cage or I'm going over top? I am not going forward against that guy. He's went in there and he's bested them all. And I have no reason to doubt him. And like John said, it's weird because he's kind of this undersized dude, but he punches like an oversized heavyweight. He has absolute dynamite in his hands, and he has an incredible jaw, and he has a way of just evading the punches. I mean, it's like I don't think anybody would say his boxing's overrated, but he has great head movement. He somehow is able to move his head at the last minute, so he absorbs as little of these punches as possible. And he just overwhelms these guys when he counters them. And I'm sticking with Whittaker, man. I'm all about it, man. I think he's got it. We've seen Yoel tire as the rounds go on. So if this starts edging further and further, and this is a lot of, him trying to maybe catch Robert. If Robert's moving around, coming in there and striking when he needs to and backing out, and Yoel's running after him, he's going to use a lot of energy. And I can see where if this goes in the third, fourth, fifth, I mean, I can see Robert probably finishing them at some point. So, Whittaker, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. And as we wrap up, just an interesting question here. We've heard him talk about the fact his body's sore. He was looking at retirement soon. Do you think if things go bad for Romero here, people might get shocked by the fact that even he might go for a bit of a retirement in the octagon after the fight?
I doubt it'll happen this one. He still got, I mean, he might, unless he just gets to the point where he doesn't think he's going to get another title shot for a while. That'd be the only reason I could see where he might be like, all right, I'll walk away for a while, because physically he's still so damaging. He will damage most of the guys in that division, and and he's just such a physical specimen.
Well, think about it. I mean, they're supposed to do a fight in Argentina, maybe in like November, December. I mean,
Argentina.
But bring him now that they're going to more like Spanish-speaking countries. I mean, maybe you could put him on that victory tour. Not necessarily against number one contenders or championship fights, but I'm sure he wouldn't mind putting a little more cash in the bank. I know doesn't he have a child that's still in Cuba? And I mean, there's, you know what I mean?
He's got that translator he's got to pay that comes around with him.
The one that doesn't speak both English or any other language. We had our videographer Christian there who can speak any language, and he was translating stuff for him because he was mistranslating half of the things in the scrum.
Not Ray, the guy that was in Perth. Properly.
It's so great. I just remember the translator that Dana fired in the middle of Anderson Silva and Vitor Belfort at the press conference. He's like, you can go. Great moments in UFC translation history. Look, we didn't even talk about as far as the Gadella, Bektic, Lamas. I mean, that's how ridiculous this card is, man. This card, it's a sick card. paper, it's as good as they get. It's as good as they get.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an amazing event. Guys, make sure to check out the coverage by the boys here. John and Ken, of course, check out the MMA Roadshow. You can follow them on Twitter at the MMA Roadshow and check out all the latest episodes. MMA Junkie. Obviously, follow Ken on Twitter at Ken Hathaway. Ken S. Hathaway.
Yeah, I had to put my full name. I was afraid people wouldn't know. My mom, she can find me. She knows my middle.
Follow Ken, of course. Follow John at MMA Junkie John. And guys, what's a couple of things? You guys obviously have amazing coverage. What are a couple of things that people need to be looking out for in the next few days? Because we know there's a whole bunch of exciting stuff happening over there.
John's like, I don't know. We don't have any content. You guys are going to be stacked with content.
Will you guys be horsing around on this one?
We're going to get free beers at the Modelo headquarters on Thursday.
Oh, wow.
That could be the end of you, John. Free beers.
I think Modelo would run out of beer, John.
Dude, we're gonna give
him a shot.
Yeah. Dude, is it weird that they haven't asked you to be a spokesperson for them yet? I mean, this is a partnership made in heaven.
That should be you, not Stipe in the commercial.
The UFC might be a little upset when their checks are a little bit lighter when this sponsorship deal, when they're like, well, listen, we had committed $10 million, but John Morgan came in and put a little.
They'll find a way to take your money, John.
Well, they were the B-roll for the commercial when Modelo was like, oh, and they show Stipe fighting fires. They're gonna show John going into B-dub and like at the bar. It's just
slow
not
motion. Yeah.
It's not the same.
Yeah, but now listen, like obviously we'll have everything covered. We've got some sit-down interviews coming with everybody. So I mean, this card is so stacked that like literally, I mean, we've got sit-down interviews with CM Punk, which I'm excited about. Mike Jackson, Holly Holm. I mean, we got a ton of stuff planned. So yeah, we're enjoying this evening, and we're glad we got to spend time talking with you fellas. But yeah, we're enjoying tonight because after this, the schedule gets pretty damn intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, guys. The best in the game, and thanks for giving us 20 minutes for the chat, guys. It was about 20 minutes, right? I mean, time flies when you're having fun. We only quadrupled it by.
You're never even gonna be able to get this uploaded, dude. This is never.
C300 will get it up. Thanks so much, gentlemen. Enjoy Chicago. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.